Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Liz Walker, and welcome to our live stream from the heart, our search for healing and hope. It's good to be back with you. I wasn't here last Tuesday because last week we were preparing for a live show with Tamron Hall, which was a huge moment for us. And we're going to, Michael, where can they find that show? Can they find it right now that we taped on Tamron Hall? I think it's on YouTube, but if it's not, we can certainly let you know how to get that show. We got to talk about the book, the newly released book that I wrote called No One Left Alone, How Community Helps Us Heal. So we out in the world, the book launch has begun, and it is an exciting and fast-paced launch. But we're back today live because we want to talk about the program and the movement behind the book, the Can We Talk Community Trauma and Healing Program that started in Roxbury, Massachusetts, and now is spreading across the country. And this is a program that creates safe and sacred spaces for people to share pain and grief and fear and confusion. Right now, we have 19 sites. We are growing by leaps and bounds for a grassroots organization. We started our most recent replication site just this weekend in Washington, D.C. at the Pilgrim Baptist Church. So the pastor there is Joel Limerick. So it's just amazing to me how this is all growing. But we're going to talk about how it got started. And maybe over the next few weeks, we'll interview people from some of the sites so that you can see that even though it's, a set curriculum and a set plan, a set healing model, each church, each replication site brings something very unique to the program. So this is not a franchise. There's no pay in. It's just about joining this idea that communities can kind of heal themselves with God's help. And tonight I'm really excited because we have one of the first sites that was created in replication in Boston, South Boston, as a matter of fact. It was the Fourth Presbyterian Church in South Boston. And we started this program, I think, there back in 2017. And it's a really beautiful church with wonderful leadership. And they have really taken the Can We Talk model to another level. So I'm going to introduce one of the facilitators of the program, and then we're going to talk to the pastor, and we're going to talk about some of the interesting programs that they're doing, kind of taking it the next step. Lauren Basler is going to join us. Lauren, I think I've got your name right for the first time in maybe 20 years.
That was great, Reverend Liz. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your book. That's amazing.
I'm so excited, but in a way it's kind of our book because it's about the program. It does do a little memoir as well, but thank you. It really is exciting. Being on Tamron Hall and being in national television show was very, very exciting. But you are really at the ground floor of what we've been doing with Can We Talk?
Yes, because we were.
Yeah, you started 2017. Was I right?
That's right. I want to give a shout out to Reverend Katie Cole, who was at that time the children and youth minister at Fourth Presbyterian Church, and she sort of got the ball rolling back in 2017. She had reached out to Colleen Sharka and to you and to others at Roxbury Presbyterian Church to bring, the Can We Talk model over to Fourth Church. So 2017 was when the ball kind of started rolling. 2018 is really when we launched our program.
No, and I was just going to say, we were still kind of learning as we were going, right. Making the road as we were walking back then. So when you came on board, it was just at the perfect time because you had your own way of kind of doing the program. And I don't mean you changed it, but you added so much to it. So first of all, tell me a little bit about Fourth Presbyterian Church, because your mission overall, and I know we're going to talk to Pastor Burns in a few minutes, but you have such a creative approach to ministry there, right?
Yes, I would say so for sure. I've been going to Fourth Church now for a little over 10 years. And I think one thing that really drew me into the church initially was the emphasis on the arts and the music that's created there and the community feel. It's a small church, I would say. Burns can speak to that, I think, but and a Protestant church in South Boston, you know. So and there's just a lot of different kinds of people, and I don't know. For me, coming to that church at a time when I was sort of looking for something, I was new to Boston, and community is so important. And being in recovery, one of the 12-step groups there is what sort of drew me there initially. But bringing piece by piece, well, what we call piece by piece, and I can speak to that in a little bit, sort of your model of Can We Talk, really fit into what I was doing at that time in my life, which was studying to get my master's in mental health counseling. So that's what brought me to Boston. And so to find out that, like, okay, there's a church in Roxbury that's sort of putting an emphasis on combining, you know, religion with that mental health lens was really, really interesting to me. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of this replication right away. So I've been sort of at the ground. I've been there since the beginning.
Absolutely, since the beginning, and we've grown closer, I think, as two churches, as sister churches in a way. And I love the idea that you named your program Piece by Piece. So why don't you explain that?
Well, that was really Reverend Katie Cole again, who I just have to. I hope she's watching tonight. But honestly, we kind of were thinking about how you know, we all end up broken somehow. You know, and there's a Japanese kintsugi, you know, this idea that, like, we can mend ourselves and become something that's even more beautiful in the mending, right? So we kind of went with this idea of brokenness, healing, mending, and we came up with the name Peace, P-E-A-C-E. So creating peace by Piece, P-I-E-C-E, from all the different pieces of ourselves that we bring to this gathering. So we use the Can We Talk model, but we do call ourselves Piece by Piece.
I love that. It's a beautiful and very symbolic and very right to the point name, a very good term. So tell us about your program. I mean, who comes or here's one question. Was it difficult in getting started in drawing people, or did people just naturally come?
I would say that there was a natural flow from people from our church doing outreach to the community to get, you know, people that maybe had never set foot in a church, or, you know, folks that we knew could use this. That's been a little bit more of a challenge, but we've really risen to the challenge, I think. And we've tapped into a lot of different communities in South Boston, including the recovery community. And we've sort of outreached to different community health clinics and things like that. And so we have been able to get some people that not only are parishioners, but we have some people that come just for the Piece by Piece gatherings, you know? So initially a challenge. I think we're rising to the occasion, though. And we do 3 gatherings a month now, which, so starting out as 1 gathering a month on the first Monday of the month, and then having the pandemic happen and having to sort of pivot and figure out what to do there. After the pandemic, we started our arts night, our arts healing night, which we also sort of modeled off of you all at Roxbury Pres. So now we have first Monday, third Monday, and in the middle there, we have a on the road version of Piece by Piece, where we go to an elderly housing community, which Danae and Reverend Burns will speak to in a little bit. So we've grown in our programming as well, which is really exciting.
Now, when somebody asks you what Can We Talk is, how do you describe it? Because I think we all bring our own little. We know it's a safe and sacred space, but what do you tell people when they ask you what this is all about?
You know, I try to emphasize that you can share or not share. I think that's a really important thing to remember. It's a space that you don't find much in our daily lives, a space where you can just come and be for an hour. You know, we light candles, we create sort of a mood in the sanctuary with beautiful music. And you're able to just sort of be. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, right? You know, and it's so rare that you get those moments in our, you know, fast-paced world. So I try to explain to people that everyone has something on their heart that they can share, of course. But even if you feel uncomfortable getting up and sharing in front of people, you are healing yourself, and you're helping everyone else at the gathering just by being there to hold that space.
Absolutely. Of course, the sharing is about release and
Yes.
releasing yourself of what, but the just being there quiet is a really a healing state too, which I don't think we think of much. I always think of it as just coming and catching your breath, you know?
Yes, exactly. And it might take you a few times of coming before you're like, okay, I'm ready to start sharing. Or you might be able to jump right in and share. And we do keep the shares to about 4 to 5 minutes, depending on how many people we have. We have a licensed mental health counselor there. You know, all of the things that you've modeled for us, Reverend Liz, you know, we really do try to emulate because we want to keep that safe space. We don't want someone to feel like, you know, they're going on too long. And, you know, so we have a time holder, we call it a time holder, who can gently just say, okay, it's time to wrap up your share. Everything that you've modeled for us, we've really, really taken the ball and ran with it, I think.
You mentioned the recovery community, Lauren, and you said did you say you had come out of the recovery community?
Yes, yes, I'm also part of the recovery community, and that's really important for me.
So how does Can We Talk fit into your recovery or anyone's recovery, do you think?
I mean, I think it fits in so well. First of all, just because I think one thing for me, I can only speak to myself, of course, but
Of
you know,
course.
being in recovery, you can't do it alone. You just can't do it alone. So whether that's AA or a church community or a trauma or therapy or a combination of all of that with some piece by piece as well, like it all is good, and it's a good and a beautiful thing to be able to share your story, because you don't know who's listening, who might really need to hear something that you have to say. So I think, you know, it goes hand in hand with, you know, things like AA and NA. And it's beautiful to hear people get up and share their experience, strength, and hope, as we say in AA. You know, we can do the same thing in piece by piece.
I think the thing I've learned from the recovery community, because you guys have really kept us strong in many ways, because I think at every site there is that contribution from the recovery community, and I think the humility that people who are going through recovery bring to our efforts is really important, because humility is, I think, a part of healing and a part of having a sacred community. Do you agree, or do you see my point, or does that work for
I
you?
totally see your point. Absolutely. No, it all helps, and it all works, and it all heals. And, you know, we say in our guidelines, you know, in the beginning, we aim to create a safe space. That is our aim. Our mission, you know, is to create this space where people feel comfortable being together, sharing stories, crying, letting out emotions that maybe have been held in for a long, long time.
Yes.
Anger. I mean, there's a lot of emotions that can come up during these gatherings that we just aren't like able to show on you know, in the real world sometimes, because it's just too much, right? So to have
Yeah.
a space where and we put tissues out on each pew, you know, and water, just to help, right? Because the emotions come. They really do come sometimes. And whether it's at our gathering where people talk, or whether it's at our gathering where people create art. You know, we have collaging and watercolor and clay and journaling, and a lot can come out through the pen, the written word, you know. So um, that's also a really beautiful gathering, because sometimes people, you know, talk isn't going to be for everyone. So that's why we want to vary it up. And that's what you've done at Roxbury Pres as well. Like you have to have different modalities too of healing, because one person might connect with getting up and sharing a story, but then another person might connect with just, you know, sort of quietly drawing or listening to music or doing something like that.
I've learned too that contemplative practices, which is what we're describing here in some ways, are the practices that we've used down through history for healing.
Yes.
But I think we get removed from that, and so in a way, we're kind of bringing back some old ancient practices. You know,
I totally agree, and I think that, you know, there's things that we do, you know, during piece by piece. One of our facilitators, John Hazilla, who couldn't be here tonight, but is wonderful. He's created giving everyone a stone as they enter, a river stone that you can sort of hold during the gathering. And and just feel, you know, how it's cold when you first get it, but it's warm by the time you give it back,
Wow.
you know. And so we say, you know, you can either keep the stone, you know, I have mine in my purse right now.
I love that.
You either keep it or you can give it back, or you can put it somewhere in the world that you think needs healing.
I
So
love that idea. Now
I credit John with that.
Yeah, we use stones at the end as part of our
Yeah.
ritual at Roxbury Presbyterian Church. But Colleen Sharka, who is our head of replication and our everything, she's our guru, she's our mother.
Yes, we love Colleen.
We all love Colleen, but she brought that ritual. But I'm going to tell her about John's ritual of bringing the stone in at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother level of that. I want to bring in your pastor.
Yes,
and
please.
Your team, so we can continue this conversation about the Can We Talk replication model. So Micah, if you hear me, we can bring in Pastor Burns Stanfield and Danae Jacobs, I think, are there. Hi, Danae. Hi, Pastor Burns. Reverend Burns. These members.
Hi there.
Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. So Burns, you're the one who said, yes, let's do this.
Yes.
When we came to you and asked about Can We Talk, what were your expectations and how have they been met and how have they changed of what this program, this healing program, is all about?
Well, I would say we have a good tradition, a wonderful, rich tradition of saying, yeah, let's try that. That's a new way to to heal, to create, to be community, to basically to practice love, right? Isn't that what it's about? And there were a couple things going on. There had been some violence in the neighborhood recently at that time. So we were thinking we need to respond. A donor had actually come by and said, "What would you do if we gave a little money?" And said, "Well, we're thinking more and more about trauma, and we were aware of some things going on at Roxbury Pres." Anyway, we went from that. I have to say, personally, you know, you've named the year. It was 2017. That was a really hard year for me personally. My father died that summer, and my wife died a couple months later. So I was certainly open to things and open to the creativity of Katie Cole that you've been hearing about and other folks who had an interest. But then in reading about trauma and healing, I was really reading about grief. And so that whole journey of creating a program for others was very much a program of healing for me, you know.
Wow.
And it sort of, it kind of locked. That was really, this program has been a huge part of my own journey through grief, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's
one.
It has been my journey through trauma, and it is so fun. That's not why we started it,
Right?
but
Right.
it is interesting how when being a part of it helps you. Can you kind of explain the mystery of that? Why it just because it turns our attention to it? What do you think is the reason that it does help so much?
Oh.
And I mean, I mean, we know why it helps other people, but
it's a great picture. It's the mystery of healing, and I would say there's a couple of pieces, and you all I think have already been touching on them. One of them is the power of being heard, of being witnessed, and I love the word abide. We're abiding with each other, and these are terms that we've knocked around a little bit. You know, when we meet with Colleen Guru Sharka, you know, and it's also, and it's sharing it's very, you know, it's very biblical too, right? It's community. It's not being alone. In fact, even if I go to a session and don't feel like saying anything, and I usually feel like saying something, but just being with other people and hearing their stories and being with other people and being in the silence.
right.
Or I get to, I mean, I'm a musician, so I play piano, and I get to play with John a little bit. You heard about John, our percussionist,
Yes.
who is a professional drummer and teaches at Berkeley. To play for 3 minutes with him.
Wow. Yeah. Danae, how long have you been a part of the Can We Talk program, or the Piece by Piece Can We Talk program in South Boston?
Since the inception.
And what
Yeah.
what have you seen in how it works in your community? Or how has it helped you in any way?
Yeah. I would say a whole lot as well. I adopted 3 kids out of the foster care system, and we're living the trauma that they go through on a like raw daily basis. So it was just good to have a space. Like at that time they were very little, and so it was good and it was hard to leave them because they felt abandoned every time I would try to go to Piece by Piece. But just to have a quiet space to even process for myself, and even to realize that I'm kind of getting this secondhand trauma because I'm taking it all on for them. And so have a place that is safe and where I can be vulnerable, and you kind of don't have to take people's questions. You know, like they're not going to go, oh, well, what about this? And what, like all the details about everything that's going on. You can just like name it and just say like, look, I'm living in this right now. Look, this is like the time of the year where they feel this in their body for some reason. The first day it gets cold every year, like the first day of really fall, they fell apart, And so it's like, look, we're surviving. I was crying on the playground, like just laying on the playground crying because we were by ourselves. But like, and then come here to have a place of healing was just, such, I know a lot of other people in my shoes have wanted the same thing.
I love what you said, to have a place of healing. I think designating a place of community healing is huge. Now, of course, the church as an institution should be that place and is that place, but the church does so many other things. And I guess I'm asking you, Burns, do you see that, what I'm saying, that to have a place that this is a healing space just for that, do you see that making a big difference in how people look at our offering and what we're trying to do?
The designated space, absolutely, yes. And it helps that it's got a high ceiling and it's old and there's pretty wood and an organ that we don't really use, but it looks nice. All those pieces of space. I think beauty and divinity is everywhere. That's my theology. But I think things can help us. But space can help us pay better attention. Music can help us do that. Lots of things can help us do that. So I think the designated space and the way we frame it, which I know other Can We Talk programs have similar framings, although we may each one tweak it a little bit different. That's a part of saying that's what this space is about. Now,
Right.
So I absolutely believe that. And I will maybe use this as an opportunity to say we have taken it on the road as well.
Sure.
That's the 3rd monthly program. And we were invited to go into a fairly recently developed low-income senior housing building. Folks who were involved in that knew that we cared about trauma and had a ministry, et cetera, and invited us to come in. Mainly because those folks would have a real hard time to get up to our space, and also because those that were developing this knew that these were people from our neighborhood and other neighborhood who had gone through significant loss. A lot of them had lost their grown kids to overdoses and things like that. So it does not have the benefit of that church space, but I feel like we've worked hard to create some of that space in other ways. And be very intentional about this is what we're doing here. We're not just gathering around the table over pizza and chatting, although there's room for that. We're trying to say, here's a space where somebody can be heard and you can share your story.
And it does work, obviously. How do you create? Do you create a physical setting that helps it do what you want it to do in the space, or is it just about attitude and intention and that kind of thing?
I think Danae has an answer. Yeah.
We did put a circle up, and that has been because of the space and the people. Like, we really tried to hone in on trying to create this atmosphere. But I found that once I became vulnerable, like, it's really up to us as leaders to kind of enter into the space of like, okay, we're going to open it up now. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to go from eating a pizza to like being very vulnerable. But that is what has created this space. And so I think that I don't know, I think that's what has happened.
You've done a lot of different things. Micah's showing a picture now. Micah, could you go back to that picture you just showed so we could talk a little bit about it? That's not your senior group, but what is that picture that we're looking at, Danae? That's a training or a team meeting or what? It's beautiful.
Yes, we go to this house every year in October for a training retreat, and we call it our trauma retreat, but it really is a time to kind of like think of our program and how we're going to organize it this coming year. And this is just in the morning at the beginning of it, just kind of doing a little bit of light stretching, mindfulness, and then because then we can connect it to what we're doing, like how the body and the mind is all connected.
I like the idea too. What you've brought up is the idea that the team takes self-care very seriously. So we don't just try to, open up these spaces for everybody else. Self-care is huge right now for everybody, and especially those who are working with others in trying to heal. So how often do you do retreats at Fourth Presbyterian, Camry, piece by piece?
That particular is once a year.
Once a year.
Once a year. But do you have meetings and catching up and checking in with each other as the year progresses, or is it just that once a year big meeting?
We do emails, and it's a little less formal. We have in the past done like a little in between time, just come together. Like if from the retreat we're starting something new, then we'll kind of gather around that and do a more focused type meeting. But yeah, we do it.
Go right ahead. Was that you, Lauren? Oh, no. So let's talk a little bit about the people, and you started this, Burns, about the people in the elderly housing development. Is there a unique kind of thing? I know loneliness might be, isolation. What are some of the issues that people, well, you mentioned loss. Maybe I've mentioned them all. What are some of the other issues that?
Yeah, it's definitely loss. And because it's an older population, obviously it's more likely that your neighbor, will have an illness, and there's death. When we had just been there, gosh, maybe we'd come a couple of times. They asked us to come in a night after two really important members of the community had died. And we just led a time of sharing, which also included music, a little bit of singing. And it wasn't strictly speaking of a memorial service, but it was a time to share what you were missing about people.
Sure.
Folks were incredibly grateful. So there is, that's just in their life as a community there. Additionally, the folks in these are generally folks that have gone through some hard times. I mean, they've kind of had to live on few resources. A lot of them have experienced in different ways, substance use disorder, or their kids. I would say a lot of them have had loss through their kids.
Yeah.
I've found that it's never been explicitly said, but it seems to me that a lot of these people that attend haven't had spaces like a therapeutic setting. And so they're talking about some of this stuff that they've held in their body for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. And even being brought up that you don't bother other people with your pain. And so it's it's kind of, I want to say revolutionary, but like it is sometimes the first time when they share it for the first time, it is just, it's out there, and I don't know, it's amazing to see.
I get a kick out of it. A number of them will sound pretty rough and tumble when they talk, and I think, oh man, they're really not into us. I mean, like we're just like too touchy feely. But then I'll find out later that they totally appreciate that we're there, and that there is that space where they don't have to be rough and tough. Like they can name this, and I don't like I've learned that I may not hear that in the moment, but they feel that.
Yeah. I found that sometimes when we talk about Can We Talk to People, they think we're just talking about poor people or minorities or people who are marginalized in other ways. But we've had people come, and I'm sure you have periodically, from all over, because we all have stress.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, we all have grief. One of the stories that I tell is about a man who came to our Can We Talk in Roxbury. His son had been one of the first students murdered in a mass shooting at a college in Vermont, more than 20 years ago. He came to recruit people for a gun reform program. He heard about what we were doing and he thought he could recruit. He didn't come to sit and be healed or anything like that. But he tells the story that when he came, and he saw what was happening and he sat there, he realized how out of touch he had been with his own emotions. He had just shut down himself to get on with his life. And he realized how he needed to get back in touch with that part of him. So I think there's something for everybody. It doesn't mean that you've had a murder in your house or we all have extreme experiences that sometimes we don't tend to.
Right.
I think it's interesting. One night, maybe a couple months ago, it was a night there that people were getting up and kind of sorry to have to talk about this subject again, but it was really like we've been walking with these people and for years, and of course it morphs, it changes, it comes up at the same, like anniversaries come up at the same time every year, but it was a particular night where everybody was kind of giving their update, but it wasn't like necessarily I'm stuck in this rut. It's like I was here, now I'm dealing it with this way. And so I loved that evening where we all, yes, we were still talking about the same subject that we usually talk about, but we're not sick of them. We're here to abide with them.
Yeah.
Colleen, who is our guru and our mental health clinician, says that that's how you heal. And Deborah Fitzpatrick, who is the mother of the young man who was killed, who kind of sparked this program, the Corey Johnson, who was a member of our church, said that that's how she found herself healing. She just told a little bit, and then she told it over and over and over and over again. But that was a part of the process that at the time she didn't know. So Danae, you're absolutely right. That's the part of the healing process. It to just keep telling it and keep telling it.
And then, I can think of a couple of folks who are not necessarily from the church congregation, because we do a fair bit of sharing in the congregation, I would say. But I'm thinking of some folks who came from the outside, and initially they would just come and they wouldn't say anything, and then they'd stand up and say just a little bit, and then another month, another two, a little bit more, and then at some point you hear something pretty significant. And it just it's step by step,
It's step by step, piece by
piece.
Okay, here's a question for the three of you. One of the things that we do at Roxbury Presbyterian Church, which I have not done because I left there before they started or didn't get too involved, is they have a Can We Talk on Racism. And it's its own thing. It's a little different from the other Can We Talks as I understand it. But I have always wondered and dreamed and hoped and prayed that maybe this model could somehow be developed to talk about cultural and that it comes up periodically, but an intentional part of this to talk about that. Now, here you are, South Boston, and we have some video, of course, because I'm a news background person, of your history with busing. So you know the lasting trauma of something like that. Do you think you could ever, or we could ever look at this as kind of a conversation for cultural racial healing?
I mean, absolutely. I think that this model is a beautiful model that can lead to sort of deep and rich and powerful conversations in all realms of our lives, you know, whether it be our individual trauma or our collective trauma as a neighborhood, if people are feeling that, you know. I do think that we create a space safe enough that those important conversations can be had. What that looks like, I'm not sure, but it's.
Yeah, we were a partner in trying to do that, and you helped us with this, Liz. So during the pandemic, when so much was happening by Zoom anyway, I'm active with a group of nonprofit leaders. I didn't grow up in South Boston. None of us did, and our church has a lot of people who didn't grow up in South Boston. But there obviously are people in the community still, and through the community of nonprofit organizations in 2020, there was a moment when folks thought, let's try to have these conversations. And again, the nonprofit community looked to us because they knew we were doing piece by piece. You know, they knew we were doing this thing, and so we tried to look at the busing story. You know,
how did it go? I know I vaguely remember that it was
it was good, and we had Mayor Flynn there, we had Ted Landsmark there. I mean, there in a Zoom box, you know, and they were good. I think there are hundreds more people that should have been in the conversation.
Right.
But it was really important for those of us.
Right. I think that, you know, and Micah, do you have the video? Because I've been trying to get your attention about the video of busing, Micah. Maybe he can't hear me. I'm looking at him, but I don't think.
When I have a school right across the street from where they should go, I don't care what color they are.
They'll change this.
It's like
it's supposed to be a free country.
It's getting in the country now that they're telling you to do this and do this now, and you won't have no freedom.
All I want is a seat in their school. Hey, nothing else. Let us go to our neighborhoods where our kids are safe. We want our kids safe. We want our children safe. And if I told you to eat shit, you wouldn't hear it. Niggas suck.
They were throwing eggs at the window and trying to hit people with them.
And there was like we was in school, there was throwing glass at black people and little kids.
What school was this again?
The Roger class.
Are you going back to school tomorrow?
No way.
Ordering you to disperse in the name of the Commonwealth. If you're not going to disperse, you're going to be arrested.
Micah, it was a really tremendous time, and I didn't bring up that just to exploit it, which you can obviously do, but James Baldwin says, we carry our history with us. We are our history. And so when you did that, Burns, in 2020, to have this big event to talk about racism, to talk about Boston's history, that was a huge move. In this climate, don't you think we need to be churches, Can We Talks, whatever, be doing more of that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
In a word, yes, we should. Yeah.
I participated in it, and I found it fascinating because I did not grow up here and know a lot about it except the news clips, and just to hear from different perspectives from people that were, you know, leaders at the time, teachers, and to give each person a voice and even say, like, this is what I thought at the time, and that's not how I would do things now, was important. But, you know, I see I think it was hard to facilitate and get buy-in because it's such a painful part of the South Boston history.
Go on, please.
Well, I was just going to say, there were some more citywide conversations because the 50th anniversary was in the past year. And I will say that our local effort got some stories out. And we know so much of this is stories and people who were there and how they felt. I mean, people from South Boston. We also had people who were like Ginny Coakley and other folks who from other neighborhoods who are being bussed into South Boston. So we got a variety of viewpoints. But we had our conversations, and then when there were some citywide conversations this past summer and fall, a lot of the folks we had found became, were in those conversations. So I feel good that there have been some, at least a couple of rounds, and clearly we need to have more. And trauma language informs this too. And a couple of my colleagues will just say like that was trauma and living through it. And we're still processing it. And as we know, it takes time to heal from that.
Can I also name that if you want to see some healing as well, you can come to sunrise service on Sunday morning on Easter. We're Roxbury Presbyterian Church and Fourth Presbyterian Church. Greet the dawn and welcome Easter in and sort of have this beautiful, I have to say, I don't normally wake up for it, unfortunately, but I've heard it's beautiful.
It is.
But it's also, there's healing happening, and it's because of the church, these church communities like yours, Reverend Liz, like ours, that are putting an emphasis on healing from trauma, and from that comes gatherings like, well, let's welcome in Easter on, at 5:45 in the morning on Carson Beach, a point of contention all these years ago during busing, right? So it's, there's healing happening, and it's all thanks, I think, to people with the forethought, like yourself, Reverend Liz, and Pastor Burns, and people that just know that we need to be together as a community. We need to share these stories in order to be able to heal. We can't suppress them, and we can't deny them. We have to grow together and learn together.
Absolutely. And we have to talk about it.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that we're, just trying to be victimized or talk about, dragging up the past, and people say, well, get over it. But this is all unhealed junk in our country and in our city and in our hearts that we have to deal with. So when we started this program back in 2014 at Roxbury Presbyterian Church, we had no idea of what God was going to do with it, and the fact that it has grown. And you guys have been such a tremendous part of that. I just wanted to thank you for your creativity, for your perseverance, and for your engagement in this. How do you see this going? One of my dreams is to see it go to this reconciliation between cultures and races and countries and that kind of thing. What about you guys? Any dreams of what we can do with this? Because you've already kind of taken it out into the neighborhood. Any other ideas?
Oh, man.
No, don't feel on the spot.
Well, I think they're nervous if they come up with an idea. I would ask them to do it,
Well, I think for me, it's about education. I think my emphasis is on just what is this is what we do a lot at our retreat too. What if trauma?
Right.
What is it? How do people carry it? You see people every day that carry trauma somehow, whether it's a stomach ache or a headache or something bodily, so just knowing the brain and the body are connected, knowing that you sort of have to be broken down sometimes in order to grow, all of these beautiful things that I've learned from Colleen, from just the years that we've been doing this, that helps me feel more confident to tell people, please come to this. You know what I mean? Because you might not know that you are experiencing trauma. You just might not know. This is just my life, right? This is just my life, and this is the hand I've been dealt. And what's the point of sharing it, but from what I have learned is that sharing your story frees you in a way. It frees you. And whether that's at Piece by Piece or at AA or wherever that might be, it does free you. And it also helps other people who might be struggling as well. So my dream is to just like make trauma education and like make people aware of this, people that are just going about their lives and wondering why they're feeling so off, or whatever the case might be. So that's mine, but I'll defer to you two as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could call it replication, spreading. I love, in our context, I love the way it brushes up against other things. So you guys were talking earlier about how we do a lot with the arts. We do theater and things. And Lauren just produced an amazing production of Our Town at our church. And there were some church folk who also do Piece by Piece that were a part of this. There was also somebody that we only knew through Piece by Piece.
Wow.
That participated. It's kind of amazing. And
Wow.
And I don't think he'd done theater before. And I don't want to say too much of his story. I don't think that would be appropriate, but suffice it to say, I mean, it was a new way to express, and that emotion was coming through in his acting. It was incredible. And same thing happens with music. The same thing happens with it. We've already talked about how it bumps against recovery. Like it touches so many pieces of life. So I would like to see it grow. I do like the idea of taking it on the road just because it gets to some corners. It gets to some people that are not going to cross a church door.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just for physical reasons or emotional reasons. And so I just kind of like it being in many places.
Right.
I like what Deborah just put in the chat as well. That is something I definitely learned from Colleen and from all of you. Like not asking someone not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you? What happened, right?
Yeah.
So just things like that like, 13, 14 years ago, I had no clue about, and I'm still learning. And I think that's the beautiful thing, it really is. Danae,
Right.
I don't know if you have any final thoughts, but
I agree with Burns. I think on the road, I love having it with our community at church, but if in terms of seeing it grow, I think going into different spaces and helping them be able to have a space of healing, I think I would like to see that continue.
Great. Well, you guys have done it in so many ways in your creative approach to worship, your creative approach to ministry, your creative approach to healing. So again, I am just thrilled that you took the time to be with us tonight. I like to quote the text, Burns, I think it's in the Gospel of Mark, where the friends of the paralyzed man bring him to the house where Jesus is speaking, and they can't get through the door. So they lower him down through the roof.
Right.
And I like to think of Can We Talk as coming in through the roof. It's a very subtle way of, like you said, it's about love. All we're doing is practicing God's love. It's not rocket science, but there is something mysterious and beautiful about the idea of loving people this way. So it's church, but it's not church, okay? And you guys do that very, very well. So I want to thank Burns Stanfield and Danae Jacobs and Lauren Basler for joining me tonight from the heart to talk about the replication program for Can We Talk. Thank you all, and we hope. And one thing I'm clear about at this conversation, Colleen Sharka has got to come back on this show, because we talk about Colleen like, Colleen,
the best.
So, Colleen, if you're out there listening, you're going to have to come back and do an hour or so with me. But thank you guys for joining me. And thank all of you. We'll be back next week as we continue. Don't forget about the book, No One Left Alone. No One Left Alone. How community helps us heal. It's all about this program. It's all about what we're doing now. And the launch has happened. You can find it on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, all over the place. and you can find it on my website. So thank you for joining us. Have a good night, everybody. There it is. We'll see you again. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks, Burns. God bless.